From Deloitte Tax, welcome to the Tax News and Views podcast. In this series, we talk to specialists from Deloitte about the latest business issues. I'm Carrie Falkenhayn, your host for Tax News and Views. And today's discussion is around generative AI and what it might mean for tax departments. Deloitte has been working with organizations on their finance transformations, which are increasingly including generative AI or GenAI for tax. So to discuss this topic today, I'm joined by two colleagues from Deloitte's Tax Technology Consulting Group, RJ Littleton and Ben Barudin. And RJ, I'm going to start with you. Just give us an overview of what GenAI is.
Yeah, thanks. And this could definitely be a loaded question, right? I know there's a tremendous amount of buzz in the market today on GenAI and what we're seeing in this space. I think it's an exciting time for tax in particular, but I really look at this as an extension of some of the automation journey that we've been on for years and working with clients on. You know, if you just take traditional AI, this is something that we've been helping our clients out for some time. And in large part, these have hindered around more like machine learning and rules-based solutions. But now if you fast forward to where we are today and how the technologies have advanced and changed, when I think of Gen AI, it's really about the ability to produce new content from existing data and be able to interact with that in ways that we haven't historically been able to do. From a tax perspective, it's really going to allow us the ability to engage with our data a lot faster and open and drive a lot of insights in areas that have taken large amounts of time or a tremendous amount of work to get to historically. So I think a lot of exciting times to come in this space and really looking forward to diving a little deeper here today.
Terrific. Ben, maybe you can talk about what it means for tax.
Yeah, as RJ said, Gen AI is the newest buzz in the overall finance organization, including tax. But a lot of what you hear about in the media is around how Gen AI is being used in the business standpoint, like how it's enabling products or a user or client experience on a given platform. And that's where a lot of the attention is. From a finance and tax organization, kind of where an enabling component of an organization, what does it mean? It kind of creates both challenges and opportunities for a tax function. One is it's coming, right? It's going to affect how tax functions interact with their data that comes from upstream systems. It's going to affect how tax possibly adds value to the organization. So the challenge in that is, how does a historic tax function get their arms wrapped around how to do something maybe a little different? But it also creates a lot of opportunities for a tax function too. As we all know, tax spends an inordinate time trying to harness and collect data that comes from outside of the tax function. And it also needs to create insights on that very quickly, create tax calculations on it, and then get a result very fast. And so both the challenge and opportunity kind of lie in the same arena, which is, how do I get access to that data, engage with it much faster than I possibly have been able to do before, but also then be able to provide that meaningful insight on the tail end?
Well, I can see where that could impact the type of leaders you need in your tax department as well.
Yeah, exactly. When you think about the transformation of tax and technology, or the intersection of where it's been, technology in the 25 years I've been practicing has always been able to be put on almost to the side of a tax technical or tax approach. So you have, transformation happening, and then concurrent to that, you're doing tax technical analysis. And really with the evolution of where technology has taken us, including Gen AI, it's really intersecting that. And the tax kind of department or the tax function of the future doesn't have that ability to segregate the difference between a tax technical and a tax technology need. So this really does create a dynamic where you have to think about what the leaders have to be kind of very comfortable working in a technology-led focus where data becomes much more democratized, access to it is much more real, but also then still have that ability to create that technical insight on it.
That's right. And I think too, just thinking of it from a perspective of having, think of a virtual assistant that's kind of in your right pocket all the time. These type of technologies are going to drive the ability for our professionals to get smarter faster and figure out different ways to execute. And thinking of our professionals, one of the other things I think to call out here is that the younger folks are really the ones that are going to help drive some of the innovation around this and have a big impact. And so, as we're looking to areas where we're going to see this type of solution drive innovation internally, we need to make sure that we're engaging with all of our teams.
Absolutely. Let's focus a little bit on the leaders of a tax organization. What do they need to be doing to really work within their organization to leverage Gen AI for the tax department?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of key things that have been jumping out in all the conversations that I've been having with clients. I think first and foremost, there's a big element of business partnering. So I think just as being good stewards within the organization, making sure that you've got relationships, across all the different functions and understand what other folks are doing in this space. So business partnering is going to be key. There's a lot of foundational things that need to happen to make these type of solutions work. And you want to make sure that you're getting in on those discussions early and understand what the point of view is. There's going to be a lot of discussion around governance and risk and control. And those are all foundational elements that need to be considered as you're rolling these type of programs out within a business. The other thing is just make sure that you're getting educated. There's a lot of buzzwords out there in the market. There's a lot of different technologies that are popping up in this space. Every month there's something new out there. So make sure that you understand just some of the basics around what this means and some of the terminology around how you'll drive this throughout the organization. And then I would say make sure and challenge your team. You want to think big, think of opportunities that may not have existed, think of different ways to execute on your strategy and business, expectations. Be innovative, challenge your team to make sure and continue to innovate internally. And then lastly, I would just say, make sure that you're setting expectations. There's a lot of conversation around return on investment and decreasing spend and managing the workforce. But, you got to make sure that you're setting expectations around where we think this is going to take us in the market. Just take all the regulatory requirements that are out there and the speed at which we have to provide data. With these type of solutions, I think the expectations are only going to get broader for tax, because if we have access to be able to engage with our data and get things much quicker, regulatory environments are just going to be asking us for additional details that we're not expected to produce today.
Yeah, I was just going to add one more thing to kind of pile on to what RJ was saying. A lot of this you can think of very synonymously with how Gen AI is not going to be a monolithic thing that everybody uses the same way. And so what the overall finance org is doing is everyone's looking for these use cases. And just like if you think about the old way of looking at tax, getting a seat at the table for an ERP implementation or, a finance transformation project, that tax has unique requirements and unique needs. This will play the same way for Gen AI. And so making sure that as the overall finance organization is looking at use cases and potential with it, that tax identifies and seats themselves at the table to pull those out. Again, because it won't be a one size fits all for the entire organization. And we want to make sure tax gets advocated for the needs that it in particular has.
That's a great point, Ben. And the thing I would say there too is that driving efficiencies from that, because, take the example of the ERP, you don't get your requirements in and you have to make changes, the next year or the year after, it's going to cost a lot more. So if you can just get those requirements in at the front end, you're going to start to drive efficiencies on the outputs as well.
Let's talk about some of those use cases, right? How do we make this real for tax leaders in terms of how this technology could be beneficial to the tax organization?
Yes, the magical search for the perfect use case within tax on Gen AI. So to really frame out some of those potential use cases, I think it's important to set some foundations of where is the general structure of what we're going to look at Gen AI solving for. Right? And like RJ kind of alluded to some of these things, but we're going to look at addressing those pain points around where there are a lot of manual hours, manual tasks, maybe low value tasks that I'm doing and I'm spending tons of time on. So go back to what I was saying earlier. We do a lot in tax functions around forensic accounting, looking for transactions, looking for data anomalies, looking for missing data fields, and then cleaning that data or modifying that data so that we can start our process. So looking at those pain points is one main frame. And the other main frame that really amplifies within a tax function is I need to create those insights onto my calculations, like whether I'm reporting up through the financial reporting or on tax returns. I need to be able to create analysis on that very quickly. And so when you frame those kind of two main foundations of what I need to be able to do, some of those use cases are, can I think about orchestrating a system that allows me to grab data from these disparate upstream systems, including my ERP, including my subsystems that I have within tax, possibly even in files and different technologies, and then orchestrating a flow that allows me to quickly look for those anomalies, look for missing data fields. So one of those examples is if I need to go all the way back to a transaction and flow it all the way to an indirect tax return, do I have a proper data flow of all of those data and all the data fields I need to be able to file that potential return? Or possibly in fixed assets where I have, assets being added and possibly being miscoded from a book accounting team, I need to be able to do that and reconcile that to my tax ledger. So looking for those massive data mining exercises, that's a really good opportunity to think about where GenAI could help me prompt and move that data through the system faster. On the analytics and insights key, think about the processes around how fast we need to be able to provide the reporting or the KPIs of a tax function up through the organization. So one example that we've been talking about a lot is the provision process itself. So if you think about the general flow, we got data coming from an ERP, we move it into a provision subsystem, and then we run reporting off of that. And historically, that reporting could be as simple as a PowerPoint deck or an Excel file or a Word document, but it becomes a very static file. And as you iterate changes through that process, it's harder to provide those insights. And so thinking about some of the use cases that you could think to benefit from in GenAI, what if you could interact with that data at a very summarized level by asking natural language questions to say, hey, what is driving my ETR in this given jurisdiction? And instead of having to go through 3 or 4 different people in your organization to get that answer and give you all the sub detail, GenAI would actually just provide all of that content back to you real time. So it's one of those where, again, you could take out a lot of those steps in a process to get access to the data that you have, but also then be able to democratize who can get that access and find it much quicker. So again, take out all those redundancies and those tasks that we have to do in tax just to get the data ready, and then be able to provide those insights. So those are just a couple, but there's a lot more out there that we can delve into.
And who does this work? I mean, do organizations, should they be able to expect to be able to do this work with their own tax professionals, or do you hire someone to help? What are we seeing in the market?
Yeah, I think right now what we're seeing, is a lot of some of the foundational activities that I alluded to before, but really figuring out internally how you're going to set up the environments to be able to support these type of automations and then start to get the data to pull into those. Now, from a tax perspective angle, you are going to need the ability to understand how to what we would refer to as prompt engineering or training of a model. And so there's going to be a skill set from tax that will be required to make sure that we can train the models to provide us the inputs and outputs that we're expecting. Because you've probably heard a lot about hallucination and bias around the results that come back from these type of solutions. And so there's going to be an element of how do we make sure from a tax perspective that we're getting the right information out of there. And it's going to require help. No doubt we'll be partnering with our clients in terms of executing on these, but this isn't something that's going to be easy as it starts out. And so you're going to want to make sure that you get it right and find a good provider that you would want to team and work with.
Terrific. So what are others doing, like regulators, vendors? What else is going on in the market?
Yeah, there's quite a bit in this space happening. As I mentioned before, it seems like every other week, every other day, you're seeing new articles come out about new vendors that are popping up and different niche AI startups that are out there in the market. From a third-party vendor perspective, I would just say some of the big providers that are out there, think of all of your ERP providers or your core tax point solution vendors. They're all coming out with their GenAI strategy in terms of how they're overlaying that on top of their core platforms. Really just giving you the ability to interact with that data faster, drive to faster first levels of reviews around the data that you're interacting with, and then looking for, anomalies and how we can drive to more of maybe like a materiality based approach to how we're looking at the data. So you're going to see that come up over the next, 6 months to a year as they roll out their strategies in these areas. And then I alluded to on the regulatory side, as this stuff becomes more available and we have better access around some of the information here, we're going to see new reporting requirements that are going to be expected of us. And we're always crunched for time already. And so being able to get these things right is going to be critical as we move forward.
Yeah. And one of the new terms that comes out a lot in GenAI is this concept of orchestrating, and GenAI orchestrating all of these different automation techniques in the background. So the user interfacing with, but allowing it to do a lot of things in the background. it's going to be similar on how these vendors are out there. So tax is an ecosystem of technologies in general, right? We don't do everything in one particular platform. We use a lot of different platforms. And so a lot of the journey for all of us will be, how do we connect all of these different AI solutions that are coming through all of our native vendor solutions that we have that all have different AI components, but then bringing those all together so we have some sort of seamless process that works in conjunction across all those platforms. This will evolve.
That's right. And even just a good discussion around, do I build something or do I wait and buy something? And so there's going to be a lot of thought process around decisions in terms of that from a business perspective. Because if you know that something's coming out in the market from a provider, you're likely going to look to see if you're already leveraging those technologies versus building something out internally.
Well, lots to think about. Thank you, Ben and RJ. I appreciate hearing this update now. And I'm guessing we're going to have another update in the future as this technology continues to evolve and as tax departments get more and more comfortable with it. So thank you, guys. If our listeners would like more information, they can certainly connect with RJ and Ben on LinkedIn. You can also go to Deloitte.com, and if you search around generative AI or GenAI, there's lots of materials. One of them would be our AI dossier that goes into a lot of additional detail. So feel free to check that stuff out. As always, thank you, audience, for tuning in. We look forward to connecting with you in the future, and I hope everyone continues to be well. Take care, everyone.